Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Wildwood Canyon State Park. I thought I'd take you out for another morning bird walk. We haven't been out here for several weeks on the video. I've been out here regularly. As you can see, it's a little gloomy in the background. It's the first day of summer here in Southern California. It's a nice warm 56 degrees. We're on the tail end of June gloom. This will be about the last day I can be out here at 8 o'clock and enjoy myself, because it'll be just too hot from now until about October. Best time to be out here is right at 6 o'clock or maybe even a little earlier. I'll pan around here in a minute and let you see just how gloomy it is this morning. So this is what it looks like this morning. Just hazy. You can hear a blue-gray gnatcatcher buzzing in the background there. Also an oak titmouse singing, California towhees. There's a dot on that wire, which you can't see, but I will tell you is a mourning dove. You can also hear an American crow calling in the background. There are a number of lesser goldfinches twittering. There's an acorn woodpecker called there for a minute. Nice and gloomy. The sun is starting to break through and shining on the hillside, which makes for kind of a pretty sight. A little bit of blue sky to the west. Interestingly enough, when I left home this morning, which was only literally a 2-minute drive, only a half a mile from here, it was actually sunny, but we're at 200 feet altitude, elevation higher, and so we were a little bit above all this fog. Here we are at the entrance. There's a little sign here with some information about wildlife in the park. This side is about mountain lions. I have yet to actually see one out here, but I know they're here. I ran into a family a few weeks ago of the parents and 3 little ones. The oldest one was old enough to read the sign at the other entrance, warning about mountain lions, and all she could say was, "I want to go home." I tried to encourage her, but she's pretty upset about the possibility of mountain lions. And normally I would have gone on up the road from here, but I decided to turn right today and go up on the plateau, because there's been a white-tailed kite seen a few times, and I think I'm most likely to see it if I get up on this plateau going up to what's known as the High Up House, or the McCullough House. They're the people that used to own this part of the property years ago. Now, the white-tailed kite's a beautiful bird. It's a raptor, and it used to nest out here. We could see it from our backyard. They kind of hover while they're hunting. It's really fascinating to watch them. We'll give it a try, see if we can find them today. Otherwise, we'll just enjoy what we do see. The interplay between the light and the moisture in the air is really making for a pretty effect. The break seems to be from a west to east direction. It's really quite pretty. This is one of the 2 larger oak groves in the park. Really very pretty. I'm going to turn right and go on up the trail to the plateau I mentioned earlier. Many of the trails in Wildwood Canyon State Park are old roads, but that's okay. They're nice and wide. Helps keep you away from the poison oak, of which there is a lot. At least the poison oak is pretty. It's nice and green this time of year, and in the fall there's beautiful reddish fall colors. The little buzzy call is the blue-gray gnatcatcher. They're a handsome little bird, very small. As the name implies, they catch insects. We're at the lower end of the plateau here. You can see it's still kind of foggy off to the west. Could have been a blue sky beginning to show up. This is all brown now, or as Californians like to say, California golden. It was all beautifully green this spring. You can barely hear a red-shouldered hawk screaming in the background. Pan around here and let you see what it looks like. Starting to be able to see the ridge in the background. It was all in the fog earlier. This is the entrance to a gopher's tunnel. These old fellows are fine out here in the state park, but they can make your life miserable in your yard. They will eat the roots of almost anything and will actually kill trees from doing that. Hutton's vireo calling. Here's a spider web catching the sunlight from the little moisture droplets caught in it. Always makes for a pretty effect. Here are some sunflowers that are a little past their peak, but they're still pretty, catching the early morning sun and living up to their names. These white flowers are sure pretty. I'm not sure what they are. I need to find out. There are a lot of them this time of year. Walk on up this way. I just give you a little view of what I'm seeing. Not spectacular in the sense of Zion National Park or Yosemite, but it sure is refreshing to the eyes and soul. I really enjoy being out in God's nature. I'm stopping here. I'm in the middle of a flock of little birds called bush tits. If you listen very carefully, you might be able to hear their little twittering noises. I'm sure you won't be able to hear them. And they're cutest little birds. They're tiny. Their voices kind of match. I can hardly hear them myself standing here, so I'm sure you won't be able to, but if you turn your sound up really loud, you might. Actually, the raven calling in the background is almost louder. Now you can hear them a little better. Somebody in one of the residential neighborhoods on the port of the park is using a leaf blower. And this vine growing in this tree here is interesting. This is wild cucumber or cucamonga manroot. You can see a couple of seed pods on them. They're not edible. We've arrived at the house known as the High Up House or the McCullough House. Boarded up to protect it because it's kind of out here in an isolated area, and there's only one ranger for the park, and I'm not sure they're here all the time. So unfortunately, we all know how people are. You can hear a spotted towhee trilling in the background. The people that lived out here had quite a view, as you can see. The ridge across the way separates the Wildwood Canyon from Cherry Valley. You see the fog bank to the west. Again, all this was nice and beautifully green in the spring, but it turns off brown in the summer. It's part of the annual cycle that creates this habitat. Not enough water to support dense growth of woody plants, and so you end up with a mixed grass and shrub landscape with some oak trees. This is an old pasture, that's why it's completely grass with very little brush in it. We'll walk on past the house and head out towards the east ridge and go part way up. That gives you the best views of the park. It's a bit of a climb, good exercise. As you can still see, it's still quite hazy. You can hear lesser goldfinches calling all around me. Fairly quiet bird-wise this morning, but I did get out here 2 hours late. if you want to see birds this time of year, you really need to be out here at 6 o'clock in the morning. Coming up to a fork in the trail, there's a little lizard. You can barely see him on the left, scurrying along on the trail, doing some push-ups. Wren tit calling. A California quail faintly in the background, and more wren tit. The incessant buzzing call is a Buick's wren. A Buick's wren with its buzzy call, repeatedly with intermittent singing. The right fork goes back down the hill. The left one takes us up the ridge. So we're going to go left. You can hear a Nuttall's woodpecker chattering in the background. Over here you can see perhaps the scar of the trail going across the hillside. You can hear both house wren and occasionally Buick wren singing, calling in the background. That's the Buick's wren, and that's the house wren. House wren, Buick's wren. It's a pretty effect with the sun shining through the dry grass. To the southeast, from the southern end of the East Ridge, one can see San Jacinto. It's a bit in the haze today. It's an incredibly picturesque mountain, very photogenic. I love it. It just kind of sits out by itself. Yeah, it's one of the largest exposed vertical gains on its north face of any mountain in the world, is my understanding. You might look that up to make sure I'm right, but I was told that one time. I'll pan around here to the south, and we'll pick up the ridge that separates Wildwood Canyon from Cherry Valley. There are a couple of private residences up there on the ridge, and the rest of the property is also in private hands. And then we swing around here. You can see some of the southern portions of the park, with the residential areas just south of the south border of the park. As you can see, all the grass has turned brown. It's still pretty. We've arrived on the East Ridge. And it's a really nice view from up here. Still quite a cloud bank. As you can see, the park is basically in a bowl surrounded by mountains. I'll pan around here quickly a little bit and then I'll come back and go more slowly. And the opening of the bowl is to the southwest, where Wildwood Creek goes through the foothills here. If you're ever out here hiking and you're new and you feel like you're lost, just go downhill. There's no place you can end up except back at the entrance of the park, because the opening is quite small and everything heads in that direction. There are multiple little draws in the park. It's a little hard to tell from this perspective. They all run from northeast to southwest. And the cloud bank there down in Orange County, normally you can see it on a clear day, is Mount Santiago. We'll pan around this way. We're panning now. We're looking west and panning towards the north. The ridge on the west side of the park there is visible, and just to the right of the tallest bump, it appears to be the tallest bump on that ridge, is Mount Baldy or Mount San Antonio. I'll zoom in here and try to show it to you. I just heard a Costa's hummingbird give its real high-pitched up and down call. Now if we pan on this way, you can see the crest, the ridge of the San Bernardino Mountains, along which runs the well-known, at least around here, Rim of the World Highway. We'll keep panning on around now. We're looking north, keep panning around towards the east, and the ridge line there with the light colored areas on it leads up to Mount Pisgah, but in the very background you can barely see the top of Mount San Bernardino. That's the very left end from here, or west end of the San Bernardino crest. Now in between those two there's a little dark ridge. It's right in the middle of the picture now with a prominence on it, is the Yucaipa Ridge. It has several named peaks on it, and it goes back behind the foothills of Mount Pisgah. Well, it's not called Mount Pisgah, it's Pisgah Peak, which I believe is that little triangular knob right in the middle now. That's private property, and I think sometimes people are allowed to go up there. I don't know the exact details. I keep panning on around here we're looking east, and now it's coming around to the south. We see some more of the ridges going down from Pisgah Peak, and we come around again where we can see Mount San Jacinto. Again, one of my favorite mountains. It's so beautiful. Everything's a bit hazy today. I'll try to give you another look someday when it's clear. And then we come all the way around, looking a little bit south of east, and we start picking up the ridge between Wildwood Canyon and Cherry Valley, coming all the way around. We keep coming, and we are back where we started. If you ever get a chance to come up here, do it. It's a bit of a hike. I got pretty sweaty and out of breath coming up here, but it's worth it. This is the trail I came up. It's pretty steep in places. I'll do it going downhill so it doesn't take so long. I'll give you a little bit of the feel of the choppiness of it. If it doesn't make you sick watching the video. It's a lot easier to run down than to walk down, as long as you don't fall. And here comes the really steep part. I'm gonna have to be a little careful here. This loose stuff under the feet is just an accident waiting to happen. Well, there you have it. It's actually easier going up. Here's a view from about the halfway point up the trail on the east ridge. Pretty good view from here. You can see the high up house there in the middle. And then panning around, get a view of the park. This really is a very nice park. A very nice little gem for the local folk and anyone who wants to visit here in Yucaipa. The chattering you just heard was white-throated swifts. I can't show them to you because I can't even see them myself. They called again. They don't ever perch except at night when they're roosting, and so I saw them a minute ago with my binoculars, but mostly I hear them. Now we're back in the main part of the park, and we are walking down the south side of the Oak Tree Loop. This is at the very southern end of the park. There's one more trail that parallels this one to the south over the ridge to our left. But this is pretty much the southern end of the park. You can hear a spotted towhee trilling. There's a lesser goldfinch singing in the background. Probably can't hear him. It's pretty faint. Sitting on the wire there is a male phenopepla. Kind of have to take my word for it. But that's his little song in the background. They belong in a group of birds called silky flycatchers, and they do indeed catch insects on the wing. I'll try to walk a little closer. That didn't work. Here's some more bush tits. I think you can hear them better this time. Right here, the phoenicopepla in the background, and also the buzzy call, the gnatcatcher. Here we come to my favorite part of the park. It's a grove of large old oak trees, and it's just beautiful. There's a nice wide road that goes down through the middle of it, especially in the summer when it's hot. This is a nice place to be. Surprisingly, there aren't always a lot of birds in here. I like it anyway. As you come out of the woods, the trail goes along a little area between the edge of the woods and a slope on the right, creating a little bit of a tunnel. It's quite pretty. That's a Nuttall's woodpecker chattering, and acorn woodpeckers giving that silly little call that they give. You can hear the plaintive whistle of the lesser goldfinches. You can hear Hutton's vireo calling. Awfully big voice for such a little fella. The red-shouldered hawk calling in the background. There's a female American kestrel on the top of this utility pole. I don't know how close she'll let us get, but I'm going to try walking forward and see what happens. You can hear a red-shouldered hawk calling in the background, oak titmouse, and there's also been a flicker calling. There's also a chainsaw calling. I've been seeing both male and female kestrels perched on this pole as well as nearby trees all spring. I assume they have a nest nearby, but I haven't been able to find it. There she goes. I'm back in my car at the parking lot. I had to sit in my car to film this last little section because the chainsaw is too loud outside. We covered about 3.5 miles in about 2 hours. It was beautiful this morning. I hope you enjoyed it. I wasn't able to show you too many birds, either by sight or sound, but I did record a total of 36. If you'd like to see the complete list, please check on ebird.org. Look under Wildwood Park in San Bernardino County. Speaking of which, even if you're not a birder, you might enjoy looking at ebird.org. There's lots of information there about birds, and you can see what birds are seen in your area or any other area of the world that you might be interested in. These are observations, for the most part, submitted by people who just love to go out and see birds. Maybe you'll get inspired. Thanks for joining me.